Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today we have an incredible conversation with a new friend to the show, Brett Bevell. So, Brett is an author. He has authored several books about Reiki and energy healing. We actually talk very specifically about one of these books called Psychic Reiki, and it's not what you think, but we talk about that. He is also a Reiki teacher. He teaches out of Omega Institute in New York. And he's also a poet and a wizard. And we learned so much about his perspective in the realm of energy healing, and I really loved what he shared, his points of view, because it starts to break down those barriers of limitation that a lot of us think we have to function within, especially when it comes to energy healing. So I think you will learn a lot and be inspired by what Brett shares with us today. He also created I don't know if he considers it an oracle deck, but it is a card deck and it's called Reiki Divine Healing. Again, it is a card deck, and not only does he tell us about it, but he gives us a bit of a taste of how to work with the energy of the cards. So if you are someone that is in a space right now listening to the podcast where it is safe for you to go into a meditative position, I just want to let you know now that that will come up at some point in the episode, and it is very interesting. So if you want to learn more about Brett and his work, you can visit his website, brettbevell.com. You can also access all of his online courses at academyofloveandlight.us. So that is all for now, beautiful loves. I will see you on the other side. Okay, so we are here with Brett Bevell. I was just saying before, so glad to finally meet you. I do want to thank you for taking the time for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, I also was saying to you, looking at your body of work, there are so many things that we could speak about. And you are an author, a Reiki teacher, a poet, a wizard. So we're going to get into all of it. So, one of the things I was genuinely curious about is really how you came into such deep connection with Reiki and the work that you do. So, could we just start there? How did you even come on this
Sure.
path?
Yeah, so it started in the early 1990s. I was living in New York City. I was working at a health food store. I wasn't very financially well to do,
Yeah.
and I had a wisdom tooth that needed to be pulled. And so I couldn't afford to go to a regular dentist, so I went to the NYU dental clinic, which basically meant that a student was going to remove my wisdom tooth. And the
Yeah.
student who I worked with was kind of very arrogant and very rough, and it was a very miserable experience. And after that, I probably looked like I'd been like in a boxing match with Muhammad Ali or something. I mean, my jaw
Wow.
was crazy swollen. Um, I'd never heard of Reiki before. I didn't know what Reiki was. But when I went home that night, I had a roommate named Eben Dodd who happened to, he was a massage therapist, but he was also a Reiki practitioner. He never talked about Reiki. I didn't know what Reiki was. But when he saw me that night, he's like, offered to do a session on me. And as soon as his hands touched my face, I felt this connection that was beyond me and beyond him. And I think most importantly, much bigger than the pain I was experiencing. It just really allowed me to go into this deep place of surrender and grace. And it wasn't that the pain went away 100%. It went away significantly, but there was still some pain there. But the main thing was this deep sense, this knowing of like, wow, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to get through this. This is not the end of me.
Yeah.
And that kind of sense of like being held by the universe in a way. And so after that, I was just really curious, like, well, what is this Reiki stuff? This is really wild. And I loved it. And so shortly after that, I ended up studying level one with a woman named Elka Petra Palm, who was the same Reiki master who had taught my friend Eben. And so I got my level one from her. And then several years down the road, I was then living in Ohio and co-owner of like a little pagan bookstore in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And as part of the promotion of Reiki workshops in the area, in exchange for that, a Reiki master who we were promoting attuned me and my business partner to second degree. And her name was Mary Robertson. She was a little bit more kind of independent, a little bit more playful in her style of teaching. And then in 1995, I got my master level from a woman named Mary Dudek, who had studied not directly with William Rand, but through one of his students. So that was kind of how my lineage formed. And then after that, in 95, I moved with my girlfriend at the time. We moved to San Francisco. And shortly after that, I started studying with a Hawaiian shaman who was named Jack Gray. He was very, very old, very, very short, had a wild sense of humor, kind of reminded me of Yoda. And he had actually known Hawaii Takata. And even though what he was teaching me was not Reiki, it was different shamanic work, I began to wonder what would happen if I started to fuse together different practices that he was teaching me. If I started kind of blending that with Reiki, would it somehow widen the spectrum of what was possible with what I was doing with Reiki? And literally, I would just kind of experiment on these possibilities for a period of months. And so the clear answer was yes, it did open different doors. And so that's where my first books were kind of about those processes and exploring those processes. And then, this is a very long-winded answer to your question, but then after that, by 2000, 2001, I was working at Omega Institute, and I started experiencing a modality called vortex healing, which is not Reiki, but it is a beautiful and powerful form of energy healing. And in that, there's a very strong connection to Merlin. And I studied through that up to the 5th level. And then by 2007, was having more just kind of very wild mystical experiences. In 2007, I had a visitation from the spirit of Mikao Sui while I was traveling in Asia. I was in the former capital of Laos, a beautiful, more of a village than a city called Luang Prabang. And while I was there, I got very sick, very ill. My spleen felt like it was swollen about the size of a small grapefruit. I had a fever. I didn't feel well. All the guidebooks said that if you could avoid going to a Laotian hospital, it was probably best because it's more likely you would come out of the hospital with something much worse than what you had going in. So I didn't go to the hospital. And I basically just felt like, okay, it's time to put my money where my mouth is and just do these energy healing practices on myself to try to heal myself. And so I kind of hid in my room for several days and just did nonstop energy work. And at a certain point, I heard a voice in my head say, "Would you like another spleen?" And I said, yes. And instantly I felt fine. Now, I'm not saying that physically there's another spleen appeared in my body, but I'm saying that there was some kind of transformation that happened. And so after that, I was very, very hungry because I'd been hiding in my room for a couple of days. I went out to a nearby Indian food establishment that was not far from the guest house where I was at. And I ordered my food. I sat down. It was little outside plastic chairs and a plastic table. And as I was sitting at this, little plastic table, there was an empty chair next to me. And I suddenly just felt this amazing energy just appear in the chair. And I just knew instantly that it was the spirit of Mikao Sui. And then I felt from him this ball of light go into the area of my heart chakra. And in that moment, I didn't totally understand what had happened, but I eventually came to realize that what I was downloaded was something that I now refer to as the Reiki crystal, which, if you could imagine, not a physical crystal, but an energetic crystal. Mm-hmm. It was put into my energy field that would then allow me to send Reiki simply by communicating with this energetic crystal, either with my voice or my mind. And so that then evolved into this work that I call Psychic Reiki, which again even expanded more than the other kind of experiments that I was doing with Reiki. So it's been kind of a wild energy healing journey.
Yeah.
And I think all that kind of magical aspect to vortex healing too, I think also influenced my thinking about Reiki and how could it be more magical or more mystical, even though it is already mystical and magical all on its own. So
yeah. Well, it's really interesting hearing, that background. And I'm just curious because in the story, it sounds like I'm just curious about, once you were exposed to this, did you just keep taking classes out of curiosity? Like if it wasn't until Laos that you really sat down and said, okay, let me play with this stuff, What was it for you before? Was it just curiosity? Was it something you?
Well, no, I mean, I was still playing. I was playing with it very, very much, even before
Yeah.
last. So even once I got my even after my second degree attunement, when with the distance symbol, I'm like, wow, distance symbol, that gives me access to everything,
Yeah.
to the timeline of existence, to the timeline of my soul. And I would kind of use that as a way to just explore my own consciousness, sending Reiki forward in time to my own death, sending Reiki backwards in time into previous lifetimes. When I was in the womb, what was my life beforehand? Sending Reiki to the Big Bang, to the birth of the universe. Like I was just always like sending Reiki to things just to try to tune in. Like, oh wow, what does it feel like on Mars? Let me send Reiki to Mars.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I was really just, and that was, before I even had my master level, I was doing that. So I always felt like I was kind of experimenting and playing. But yeah, it really kind of came to a new level once this Reiki crystal was given to me by Mikao Usui in 2007.
Yeah. Oh, I want to ask you about that, but I love this because I'm very experiential too. I'm like, how will you know unless you play? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of being limiting myself by where someone else may have stopped themselves.
Yeah.
But you've said two things that really point a lot to consciousness in this
Mm-hmm.
work. So even when you were talking about when the person laid their hands on your face when you had the tooth pulled, it sounded like even beyond the pain lessening, there was like this beautiful shift in your consciousness and your perspective and your awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
then with what you just described again, it's like, look at that play within the realm of consciousness. So I have to ask you about that, your thoughts around how Reiki does open the mind or what it is that it does in relationship to our minds.
Yeah, wow. I could go on forever just on that one, one question. So Reiki, to me, Reiki has an intelligence. And I think most of the people who I've studied with also believe that it has an intelligence.
Yeah.
So this is, it just kind of makes it more easy to then think, well, then how can that conscious energy also impact and influence your own consciousness to open it, to expand it, to heal it, and one of the things that I'm probably getting a little ahead of myself, but one of the things that I really love about the Reiki crystal and Psychic Reiki is that energetic crystal, right? So if there's this energetic crystal that's made out of the light of Reiki, and if Reiki has its own consciousness, then that crystal also has a consciousness.
Right.
And what I found with Psychic Reiki is that you can use that crystal to actually almost like instantaneously bring a person into very specific meditative states, right? Whether it's meditation for just deep stillness and inner peace, or meditation on forgiveness, or meditation on self-love. And when I've used it in that way, like it's like this effortless meditation, right? where
Yeah.
you're not having to go into this like particular stance or mudra, or just literally asking the Reiki crystal, oh, bring me into a meditation on XYZ, and then just boom, it just kind of instantaneously happens. So I love just that sense of playing with consciousness and seeing where it'll take me. And also then once I've had those experiences, then also kind of ascertaining, well, then how can I use what I've learned in that experience to then bring more healing to myself or to others,
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of questions about that. So one, with the working with this Reiki crystal, is it more about the broadcast, almost like the frequency that emits from you, then how it like reformats or activates something with whatever you're directing your mind to, whether that's a person or whatever that may be? Is that how that kind of works? And then also, I know that you have a book about this. You have a book about Psychic Reiki. So is this some kind of intelligence that anyone can activate within themselves?
So yeah, good question. So the way I see it, the way I see the Reiki crystal working on consciousness in terms of shifting meditations, and I actually feel this very specifically when I'm doing particularly a group healing,
Yeah.
which is also very easy to do with a Reiki crystal. Like sometimes I'll do healings on, hundreds of people simultaneously and just talking to the Reiki crystal, and it just kind of, sends that frequency out to everyone.
Yeah.
Is that if I'm doing a group healing, and if in the course of that healing, I use the Reiki crystal to bring the group into a specific meditative state, I will, for example, if I was asking it to bring everyone into a meditation for stillness and inner peace, I will, in that moment, I'll almost feel like everybody's consciousness that's in that healing zip suddenly into my Reiki. It's like their consciousness gets pulled into the Reiki crystal that's in front of my heart chakra.
Yeah.
And it's like while their consciousness is kind of in that crystal, it's like marinating with that divine consciousness, which is then shifting it into a certain state of awareness. So it's a very, I'm pretty energetically sensitive. So it's just a really cool thing to feel like everyone's consciousness in the room suddenly kind of zoop, go
Yes.
into this. And I'm not specifically asking their consciousness to go into the Reiki crystal. I'm just asking the Reiki crystal to bring them into this meditative state, but that's how it does it. And so it's just kind of really wild to sense that or to feel that energetically. And then there was a part 2 to your question.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about.
Yeah. I was asking about the broadcast, but is this something that people can activate within their own? Yeah.
So the cool thing about the Reiki crystal, and again, I feel sometimes like I'm like a Reiki mad scientist where I'm just always like playing, will this work? Let me try this. Is that a number of years ago, I came to realize that I could empower inanimate objects to their own Reiki crystal and then program that crystal to a very specific function. So the book Psychic Reiki actually has a Reiki crystal in the book, in every copy of that book. And that crystal is programmed to empower the person who's reading it at a particular point in the book when they're ready to receive that empowerment. So a person can actually get empowered to Psychic Reiki through the book or through the Reiki crystal that's in the book. And what the Reiki crystal does, it just simply replicates an energetic version of itself in that person's energy field right in front of their heart chakra.
Yeah.
And then, and then the book teaches a person how to then use that in terms of doing healings on others, etc.
Yeah. I have to say, I just want to point this out because sometimes for people, this can all sound so wild, right? And like to say like, oh, there's a Reiki crystal in the book and you can get the empowerment for the book. I have to say, there's a channel that I've followed their work for some years. His name is Paul Selig. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah. But I never would have imagined, that would sound crazy to me too. But his books had the same effect. Like not only did I feel energy in reading them, but other people I know would be like, every time I try to read this, I'm like getting sleepy or feeling some kind of energy. So I just want to point out that I have heard of people feeling the energy, the essence of whatever, kind of consciousness is within a certain book. So I just wanted to point that out for anyone that's like, what did he just say? It is very interesting. But I wanted to ask you about too. So with this experimentation and the blending and the shamanic work and all of these things, how did that lead you to? And I have to say, I always think it's really cool when people have I would say courage even to share things that aren't yet talked about, or you might be the first one saying it this way. I always am fascinated by like people that have that courage to say so. Yeah. But I was reading about your work in the Magical Awakening energy healing system. And so I was very curious about how that came about and also your connection to Merlin and Lady of the Lake. Yeah.
So that also happened in 2007. 2000 was like a big 2007 was a
year.
All these doors opening. So it was in January of 2007 that the Reiki crystal came to me, and then June of 2007 I was doing a 12-day training in vortex healing at the 5th level, which is called the Omega level, which was a training on the island of Mallorca in Spain. And again, in vortex healing, there's already an established connection to Merlin. And in that lineage, they see Merlin not just in terms of, the wizard of King Arthur's court with the pointy hat, etc. For them, Merlin is really a divine avatar, the same way that one might think of Jesus being a divine avatar that embodies that sense of forgiveness and compassion. and divine love, that Merlin is an avatar that actually existed before King Arthur's time, that was, thousands of years ago in India, and who embodied that sense of divine healing magic. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of the thread. How I was introduced to Merlin in that capacity was through the vortex healing lineage. And so what happened for me in terms of magical awakening was literally an hour after that training was complete, the vortex healing training, that was the 5th level, a 12-day intensive at the time. And I was in the swimming pool at this really nice hotel. The training had ended. I'm just swimming. And then just suddenly I just started seeing what the best way I can describe it is if you've seen the film The Matrix, how there's the ones and zeros that kind of trickle across the screen as the credits are rolling. It was like that in the background of everything I would look at, except instead of ones and zeros, it was just this sparkly white light, right? So I was seeing this sparkly white light just trickling in the background of everything. And I could also sense and feel a consciousness behind it. And it was kind of like talking to me. And I had this instant knowing that this light, this consciousness was benevolent, and that I could work with it. And so literally while I was there in the swimming pool, I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And I was telling her about my experience, and I said, can I empower you to this? And so I just told the energy to empower my wife. And then I asked her, she wasn't my wife yet, but now, and asked her to then send the energy back to me. And so I was feeling this magical play, like this kind of ping ponging of this really cool energy going back and forth. And so I didn't know what to do with this, because it happened right at the end of a vortex healing. And I was like, did I just somehow become a vortex healing teacher, even though I didn't receive an empowerment from the teacher? Like, what's going on? And so I reached out to the woman who had trained me in the first 4 levels of vortex healing, a woman named Alexandra Marcourt, who had just stepped down as a vortex healing teacher at that time. And I said, I explained to her what happened while I was at the training with vortex healing founder Rick Wyman. And I said, this thing came to me. And she's also very, very intuitive, and somebody who I really trust in terms of her energetic read on things. Mm. And I was like, have I become a vortex teacher? Like, what's going on? She's like, no. She's like, no, it's not vortex. She goes, it has a more feminine energy. It's much more playful, and you're supposed to work with it and develop it. And I was like, okay. And so I still didn't really fully understand at that point the connection to Merlin or Lady of the Lake. What was happening was, at the time, I also, working at Omega Institute, I would also often do weekly group healings for the staff. So staff would just come lie down in a room. There'd usually be 20 or 30 people there, and I would just kind of send the healing to whoever was in the room. Yeah. And after this experience, what would happen is I would do that intending to be doing a vortex healing, and this other energy would just come through. Right? And I wasn't talking about it because I didn't really know how to frame it or how to express it. And so what I was doing was asking people, what was your experience like? And people often, I really liked it, but it felt a little different this time. And so I kept hearing that. Okay, it felt a little different this time. And then I began seeing, as I would do it, I would see an image of a grail appear in the area of my heart center, which is where the energy was coming through initially. It was just coming out through my heart center. And I would see this image of a grail, and the light was kind of spinning out of this grail. And then after a period of time, then I started seeing energy coming out of other parts of my energetic system, another light coming out near my navel area that had more of a fiery kind of dragon-like energy to it. And then again, this was happening over a period of weeks. Then eventually I started seeing this other light coming out of the top of my head that was more out of a crown. And I refer to that energy now as Arthur's crown. And each of these energies felt a little differently. Like, so the Grail energy felt very nurturing. The Dragonfire energy felt like very fierce and like burning out negative energy. And then the Arthur's crown energy felt much more about wisdom and awakening. And so for a while I thought, okay, well, there's these 3 energies and that's it. That's the whole system. But as I continued with these healings at Omega, more things just started showing up. And so what happened is, over a period of years, it revealed itself to me as a kind of a many layered system that currently there's 9 levels that I teach to the public. And then there's a 10th teacher level that I also teach, which is more by invitation only. But So it's shown itself to me as this very elaborate, powerful, and yet also very playful system. It is very much in the spirit of play. I would say anytime I do a magical awakening healing, I just feel very joyful. It's because I feel like I'm a kid that's just playing, right? I feel
Yes.
like I'm. It's in it's a different way of approaching it too. It's not like I'm coming into it thinking, oh, this person has a disease and I need to heal them. It's more like, okay, we're all together and I'm just going to play with the divine and play with divine imagination. And in the process, some healing will happen, but it's not like I'm trying to fix anybody or, it's just a different approach, and it's very playful and very whimsical. And yeah, I would say of the things I do, it's probably my favorite in terms
Yeah.
energetically. No.
I think playfulness is such an important part of healing. And so, yeah, like I always joke because one of my teachers is very playful too. I always say he's like a living elf. But I think it's such an important part of healing. And a lot of times in this realm, people get so rigid and so serious. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, lighten up a bit. I have to
Yeah.
tell you this. I have another question for you, of
Yeah.
course. But it's interesting when I was reading about your connection to Merlin. I've told this story on the podcast several times, but I just tell you really quickly. One time I was at a meditation retreat years ago. Deepak Chopra had a
Mm-hmm.
wellness center in San Diego. And I went to one of these retreats. And on the last day, we were all like 600 people in the room sitting.
Mm-hmm.
And, they always say, like, be still, be still. Like they kept echoing this. And all of a sudden, this voice came, and this had never happened to me before. And this voice came in and said, there's no such thing as stillness. And I opened my eyes and I look around the room and I was like, what? And so I closed my eyes again. I was like, what? And the voice came in and said, there's no such thing as stillness. Like everyone, like your heart is beating, your lungs are expanding, contracting, like all of these things, right? And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is weird. And then a few minutes go by and then this voice comes in and says, there's no such thing as magic and starts laughing. And I was like, what? And they said, well, like, magic exists, but
Yeah.
everything that you all consider as magic is just your lack of understanding of the universe.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. So they were explaining kind of like, like if you brought someone in from a time period where there was no electricity yet, if you transported them here, flipping a light switch, they would think that was magic. So
Yeah.
just saying whatever. Anyway, it ended up leading me down this whole path of exploring Hermeticism. But at the time I said, who are you? And the voice came in and said, Merlin. And for me at the time, I was like, what? Because the image in my mind, I was like, Mickey Mouse. Remember Mickey Mouse
Uh-huh.
with the hat?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, no, no, no. So then I went down this rabbit hole with that. But yeah, so anytime I hear that name, I always think about that one experience. And it was just so, I don't know. It
Well,
changed me in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about psychic work because even with the name of the book, like Psychic Reiki, I think there
mhm.
would be an assumption, of course, that it's relating to psychic development.
Mhm.
So, was that the case with you in doing energy work? Did you open up psychically? Do you mean it in that lens or?
It's interesting. I would say yes and no. So
Okay.
the I'll start with the no part first. So
Hmm.
for me, the real reason I use the term psychic Reiki is more about um, that the practitioner can just literally be in telepathic communication with that energetic crystal
Yeah.
and just talking to it with your mind
Hmm.
and telling it do this, do this, do this, and it does so. And so that's where I came up with the term psychic Reiki. But does it expand your consciousness in a way that I think helps people develop better psychically? Yes.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to give the impression that it's like a psychic training
Right.
or that. But I think it does open people to be more psychic for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other question about this before we move on to something else. Do you, in your personal work and what you've noticed,
Mm-hmm.
would you say that this intelligence, like working with Reiki, what we call Reiki, that it works with people, like it meets people where they're at? Like, do you think that there's an aspect of it that really it would make sense that people have such diverse experiences with it, even if at the core there are some similarities. But have you noticed that it will work with us in very like personalized ways?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it reminds me of this image that I had. Oh, wow, this is a long time ago. Probably, I don't think I was even at level 2 yet. I think it was when I was at level 1. There was a point I was living in Ohio, and I remember having this meditation experience or this mystical experience where I was kind of meditating on the idea of like why are there different spiritual paths? Why are there different spiritual experiences? How come it's not all just like one unified thing?
Yeah.
And the image that I was shown was of all these different like souls, but with each of them having their own like umbilical cord to source, right? And that each of those umbilical cords is unique and different. And so, again, this meditation I was having, I felt it was more about people's spiritual connection, but I think that also relates to Reiki and their experience of Reiki, that each person's going to have that own personal connection with that divine intelligence that is in Reiki. And so how that intelligence is going to teach them or reveal itself to them, I think is going to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Maybe push what buttons need to be pushed to get them to grow, maybe open what doors they're willing to step through to help them move to the next level. So I do think it's very individualized in that way, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I like this, Brett, because again, it points to, I think, giving a lot of people permission to trust in their own experiences, because a lot of times people will shut certain things down or think they're making something up because they didn't read that in a book or no one else
Yeah.
said that that's what happened to them. So I really love a lot of what you're saying points to that, like trust in your experiences. And I do believe too that Reiki in of itself is like the greatest teacher within this realm of work. So very cool. I want to ask you about too, kind of speaking about psychic or intuitive. I know that you have a deck of cards, the Reiki Divine Healing card deck. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny when you said about the binary code, like the lights kind of coming in that way. I have a Oracle deck as well that I created during a couple years ago. And there
Mm-hmm.
was one card in particular, and I asked the artist, could you please put this Rumi poem in binary? And
Oh,
I
wow.
sent her the binary code of the Rumi poem.
Wow.
And I thought, like, who's going to really take the time to do this? Because that's a lot, like to put the
Yeah.
sequence of the, and she did it.
Wow.
And it is my favorite card just because I couldn't believe that she took the time to do the binary that way. But anyway, I was thinking about or wondering about you creating this deck and from what you've shared, also the connection to what energy is embedded within the
Mm-hmm.
imagery and in the cards. So, what drew you to even create the deck and what is it primarily used for?
Yeah. So the deck I feel like was kind of divinely planned. I mean, really, what happened was I was doing a group energy healing in a healing center in Mount Kisco, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 40 minutes or so north of New York City. And at the end of that healing, a woman from the back walked up to me and she goes, "My name's Allison D. Nicola. I work for US Games. Would you like to make a Reiki deck with us?"
Oh, wow.
And so it just kind of landed in my lap. And
Yeah.
then I said, "Well, certainly I would love to." And then the next step in the process was to find the right artist. And they had a list of people they kind of recommended. They weren't trying to push anybody on me, but they
Yeah.
said, "If you want to explore, here's just some people who we think might work. And also, since you work at Omega Institute, you've had experience with a lot of artists. Maybe there's somebody you know." And so I was really researching things online. And what happened was a fellow named Ben Shikowitz, who actually used to be my assistant at Omega, and who I knew quite well, I was looking at his work online. And as I was looking at his work online, I realized some of his paintings already would be perfect fits for some of the cards that I envisioned.
Yeah.
So the deck has 44 cards, and I think maybe 7 or 8 of them he had already painted them, right?
Wow.
Like, and I knew I had a good working relationship with him. And it's like, okay, I think he's the guy, you know. And one of them, I think I actually have the card right here, which I'll show up. One of them is I'll hold this up for. I know not everyone's on visual, but some of them might see. So
Yes.
this painting, this was a painting of a woman named Amina Eagle, right? In the deck, it's also the card for the precept, just for today, I will be kind to every living thing. Amina worked at Omega Institute. She was part of the founding of Omega Institute, and she was known for her just generous, kind, like the kindest person you'd ever meet. And you can kind of see that for those who can see the visual, you can kind of see that in the image on the card. And so again, he had already painted this. He had already painted it to honor Amina. She was still alive at the time we signed the contract. And I remember sending her a Facebook message saying, Amina, Ben and I have just signed this contract with US Games to do a Reiki deck, and I would love for your image to be in that deck, embodying the sense of the precept of kindness. And she wrote back, I would be so honored. And then 2 days later is when she passed on to the next round. So again, I felt like everything was just kind of lined up to happen the way it was meant to happen. And so it was very, I want to say effortless, but that's maybe not totally true, because, Ben still, even though he, maybe 7 or 8 of the paintings were already there, he still had to paint another, almost 30 paintings, which is a lot. So it was, I think, about 7 years from the time we signed the contract to when the deck was actually finished.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, for anyone who didn't see the image, you could see the kindness in her face. And it's so incredible. The way that, I want to say, like, through all of our sensory and that connection, even for it to be a painting, not an actual photograph, and yet you can still see the kindness emanating from her. Yeah. So with that, of the 44 cards, are they all related to, like, like the precepts or symbols and these sorts of things? And again, how do people work with them, or what was your intention of how we would work with the deck?
yeah, so the deck is, there's 44 cards, and they're divided into 4 suits. So there's one suit that is called Reiki's Foundation, and that one is about, like, there's an image of Mikawasui, there's different symbols. So that really is about the foundational sort of aspects of Reiki. Then there's another suit called Reiki Meditations. That one has different meditative states that the cards can bring you into, such as forgiveness, self-love, inner peace. But also within that suit, there are meditations on the precepts. So, for example, the card I just showed you is in that suit of Reiki meditation. So, just for today, I will be kind to every living thing is the energy for that card. There's also another suit of what I call saints, angels, and avatars. So in those, the cards are of different images of beings who maybe we wouldn't necessarily associate as being, from Reiki, but beings that still hold a very healing or awakening vibration that could be beneficial to a healing. And so those cards, what they do is they actually have energetic, what I call a Reiki portal, which, again, even at level 2, when I got the access to the distance symbol, I realized, oh, well, that's a portal, right? It's moving energy through time and space. It's a portal. And so what the Reiki crystal can do is create energetic portals to different places. And so in those cards, there's literally a Reiki portal to whatever being is on the image of the card. So some of the cards, like there's a card for Buddha, there's a card for Jesus, there's a card for different certain angels. And so that whole suit of those 11 cards is designed to bring in energy from other higher level beings into a healing. And then there's also the last suit, which is I call the suit of Reiki treatments, where the Reiki crystal that then each card in those is designed to elicit a very specific treatment. So I think maybe I'll pull one of these up just so you can have a sense of, like, for example, this is the etheric body, and it's just etheric body Reiki. So the card is sending healing to your etheric body using that. So the way the cards work is that, again, each one is empowered to its own Reiki crystal. So essentially, it's like having 44 healers with you.
Okay.
And again, the concept in Psychic Reiki is that if there's divine intelligence in Reiki, and if anything that has a Reiki crystal is made out of that, that also has a divine intelligence. So you can literally just talk to the cards and say, send Reiki to my liver, or send Reiki to bring me into a place of forgiveness or inner peace. Or you can also do it to send Reiki. And if you're open to it, I could actually do a short healing on you in the audience.
Yes, go ahead. Please do.
So, so maybe that would be the best way for me just to demonstrate this. So I would say, if you're at home, maybe make sure that you're seated, that you're not like chopping vegetables or anything, right? And I'll just pull some cards up, and we'll just go through a short healing. So I'm going to start with, and I always like to do these in like combinations. So I'm going to start with these 3 cards. The first one is the Tibetan Master Symbol. The next one is a tool from Psychic Reiki called Reiki Lasers. And the next one is another tool from Psychic Reiki called the Reiki Sphere of Divine Grace. And with the Reiki Laser card, I always have to specifically say what are the Reiki lasers connected to. So for the Reiki Laser card, I'm going to ask those Reiki lasers connect from each and every bone in your body to each and every other bone in your body, manifesting a beautiful web of Reiki light existing inside of you. And so I'm asking these 3 cards together to send a wave of healing light, to activate and synchronize and send a wave of healing light to everybody who either hears or watches this video throughout time and space, and anybody who's here now in the present moment. And then I'm just going to kind of build on that as we go. I'm just randomly picking some cards here. So this next one is Mental Body Reiki, and then we have the Etheric Body Reiki, and then I have the Asui Master Symbol, and I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send another wave of healing light out now to everybody who's on this podcast, whether it's video or audio. And the next 3 cards I have the Meditation for Inner Peace. I have Chakra Reiki, so it's sending Reiki to your chakras, and I have Reiki for Spiritual Heart Opening. And I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send another wave of healing light out now to everybody who's here on this call, whether it's video or audio. And the next 3 cards, we have Karmic Body Reiki, we have Organs and Organ Systems, so it's going directly into your physical body, and then we have Reiki for Cosmic Awakening, and I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send a wave of healing light out to you now. These next 3 cards, I have Emotional Body Reiki, I have the Universal Reiki Healing Grid, and I have the Precept on Kindness, and I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send a healing wave out to you now. I'm not going to go through all 44 cards, but I'll pick a few more just to kind of get going. This next one has the Reiki Crystal card, which is I kind of think of it like the Joker card. Like you can, since all the cards have a Reiki crystal in them, this one you can tell it to do whatever you want it to do.
Yeah.
And then the next card is Reiki for Self-Love, and then there's also the Raku symbol. So for the Reiki crystal card, I'm just going to ask it to send Reiki to wherever is most needed for anybody who's on this call. And I'm asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send a wave of healing light out to everyone now who's on this call. And I'll do maybe 2 more. And this next set is, there's a Reiki meditation on forgiveness. There's the Reiki portal to Mikao Usui, just to bring his energy directly in. And this is also the mental emotional healing, Seiki. It's asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send a wave of healing light out to you now. And we'll let this be the last one, the last few. So we have the Archangel Raphael, we have the Chokurei symbol, and we have Just for Today I Will Be Grateful. And asking these cards to activate and synchronize and send a wave of healing light out to you now. And so that's I kind of think that is like that's like the fast track version where
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just kind of wanting to go through as many cards as I can. But there's a lot of different spreads they're in the book. So the book, uh, the book has different healing spreads that you can use for different situations. Like there's one in there that's for ancestral trauma, where there's a card that represents you, one that represents your mother, your father, your grandparents, that kind of goes back several generations, and then you ask them to activate and synchronize. It just kind of sends this energy that's kind of between you and all your ancestral lines to help clear that. There's also descriptions in there how people can create their own spreads depending on what they want to specifically work on. But I'll be totally honest, really the way I use them now mostly is either randomly picking cards, and I usually like to do it in threes, or I might have a very specific intention on a certain issue, find the three cards that I think are most relevant to that, and then just put them on my altar at home and leave them on my altar for a period of several days. And then every day go to my altar and just say, ask these cards to activate and synchronize and send to that situation or that issue.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is when I do that way, I really notice these big shifts happen. Quite profound. I mean, for example, shortly after the deck came out, I was in a car accident, and it was my fault. I hate to say it, it was my fault, right? And so luckily nobody was hurt, but the kind of tangled energetic mess that happens with feeling guilty. Oh, I created this, and everything that led up to that situation unfolding the way it did. And also just the fear of like, oh, wow, or am I going to get a huge fine? Like this was all my fault, like, and all that kind of guilt and everything. And so I put three cards on my altar. There was the forgiveness card. There was the Jesus card. There was one other card. I don't remember which one it was, but I put those three cards on my altar. And every day I would just get up and I say, please just send a wave of forgiveness to everything about this situation, forgiving me, forgiving anybody else who was part of it, who helped create it on any level possible. And I did that for maybe a week, and then suddenly it just felt like that whole situation dissipated. And it felt like it even to me had like legal consequences. Like I was really expecting like, wow, I'm going to get points on my license. I'm going to all things.
Yeah.
None of that happened. No, I didn't, like, yes, it was my fault. And yes, but I didn't get any points. I think I had to pay like a $25 fine. Like it felt to me totally like the universe had forgiven me.
Yeah.
And I think also anybody else who was part of creating that situation. And so it felt just very magical. And so that's how I tend to use it now.
Okay, Brett, I have to tell you, I'm very curious to see if anyone felt sensations during that. If they did, I hope that they will email you and let you know. So if you go back and watch, because I know you were paying attention to the cards, like there's a part of me, even right now, I feel very giddy. I felt like tingling in my face when you started. But what was interesting is right before you pulled the heart opening card, right before that, it felt like this heart opening. And I felt even my face go like, what? Like I could feel the sensation of different things.
Yeah.
But I just want to let you know, throughout it, there were sensations that I felt in different spaces. And the very last, I don't remember what you pulled, but the very end, I felt it at the base of the skull, which is interesting. Yeah. That was, listen, email Brett if you felt any sensation. But I will say, and I want to ask you if this matters with working with the cards. So when you said you were going to do that demonstration for us, I intentionally repositioned myself, create spaciousness in my body, and I tuned into myself. So do you think that when people are working with this, that it can be helpful to have that direction of mind, that intentionality to really connect with the essence, but then also the line that you kept saying at the end about, I don't remember what you said, activate, synchronize.
Activate and synchronize,
Yes. Is that included in the book too as a way for people to work with this?
Yeah, it mentions that in the book. And so again, when I think of it, if I think of the 44 cards, that each one is a healer, right? And just as in when having Reiki circles, my experience has always been if there's a number of people, if there's a number of Reiki practitioners working on one person on the table, how the energy really amplifies.
Yes.
And so when I'm basically saying to activate and synchronize, that's what I'm kind of inviting those cards to do. It's like, hey, really bring your energies together to work on that, on this situation or whoever I'm working on, the group. And it does seem like it just kind of amps everything up more. So that's a very intentional phrase that I'm using in that. And it does mention that in the book. And I feel like I missed the other part of your question. I think
The other part was the
about
intentionality.
Yeah. I always think, it's certainly the invitation for whoever's receiving the healing to be as intentional, as open as they can be, is certainly, I think a big part of the experience for sure.
Yeah. I mean, now just wondering, do you find or have you played with using the cards, say, like in a remote session during Enkaku, like that being part of the intention of the work that you're going to do?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. There's this sense of, let's find, because again, I think it's a collaboration. It's not like a me just, or not me in this case, the cards throwing energy at things. It's really an energetic dialogue. And so that the more the whoever's receiving can really be a participant in that I think the better. Yeah.
I could talk to you all day. And I have to tell you, Brett, the reason is because, again, I really love how so much of what you share highlights the openness and the possibility within this realm of work. And I really always am hopeful that there'll be less limitation and rigidity about what's possible within this realm. So it's very exciting hearing about your work and the way that you are playing and experimenting and allowing whatever is going to reveal itself to you to do that. So I do want to talk about how people can take your classes and work with you, all of these things. But before we get to that, I know that you also have the Wisdom of Reiki conference coming up in June. So if you could tell us a little bit about that and who it's for.
Yeah, so the Wisdom of Reiki conference happens each year at Omega Institute. And those who aren't familiar with Omega Institute, it's a beautiful holistic retreat center in Rhinebeck, New York, about 90 minutes north of New York City. They've been doing this kind of deep work for almost 50 years. I mean, some of the major players in the world of human transformation and meditation actually got their start at Omega. Like I know we were talking earlier about the Chopra Center, Deepak Chopra. Oh, yes. He will often publicly say that his work really took off when he started teaching at Omega many decades ago.
Wow. And
so, the Reiki conference is happening June 27th through 29th of this year. And I'm there. Also, William Rand is there. Tina Zion,
she is so lovely.
Yeah, she's funny. She's a hoot.
Yeah.
And an amazing, not just Reiki teacher, but also a medium and profoundly intuitive person. We also have Nicholas Pearson.
Oh, I love Nicholas.
Yeah, he's going to be doing a segment on Kuan Yin and just bringing that sense of compassion in your Reiki practice. And it's going to be a wonderful. Oh, we also have an amazing sound healer, a woman named Felicia Bonanno. She was there last year, and I was so blown away by the sound healing. She did have these amazing crystal bowls, and Anyway, so it's a beautiful weekend, and the intention is most people there will probably have some previous Reiki experience, but even if you don't have any Reiki experience, anybody's welcome, because the way it's set up is that first night, Friday night, I actually do a Psychic Reiki empowerment on everyone there.
Oh, nice.
So even if a person has no previous Reiki experience, they'll still have some Reiki abilities after that Friday night. And then again, it moves on into Saturday and Sunday, and a very joyful and powerful weekend. There's a lot of healings that occur. I know William always does a Holy Fire Reiki healing experience on the audience. And then, like I said, Felicia's going to do another amazing sound healing. We have some time where people are also doing group work on the table. So it's a really wonderful weekend. And anybody who's available, I encourage you to come check it out. If you if you can come. It isn't something that we do online, so it is an in-person only event, but if folks can make it, would love to see you there.
Yeah, well, we'll absolutely put the link for that down in the show description. And again, that's June 27th through the 29th. And then anyone who wants to learn from you, you have a lot of online classes available. And I know the website to access all of your courses is academyofloveandlight.us. Could you talk a little bit about just like generally what kind of offerings are there?
Sure. So the Academy of Love and Light.us is really more about my online offerings as well as some pre-recorded courses. Now I want to be very clear. I don't really teach pre-recorded like traditional Reiki classes because I really want to be able to make sure people have their hand positions right and everything that. So for that, I do an in-person training at Omega Institute, a level 1 and level 2, July 11th through 13th, and then a master level that's in September 26th through 28th. But for the Psychic Reiki work, where there isn't any need to know hand positions, I do offer an online course. It's a 14-day. It's designed as a 14-day training, though one could zip through it faster than that if they wanted to, or take their time and move slower if they wanted to, where each day there's a lesson. It begins with the empowerment, and then each day is teaching you a different technique over a 14-day period. And then at the end of that 14 days, what I ask people to do is email me, send me a short healing so I can verify that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then after that, I issue a certificate. Similarly, the Magical Awakening work that I do is also available there as a 28-day training, starting at the level 1. And then after somebody's completed the level 1, if they want to move on to higher levels, then I send them the specific link. I don't have the higher level links available to the public because I want to make sure people have moved through the prerequisites first. And then there's other courses on there as well. Some of them are just different healing courses, self-healing courses. Some of them are me doing pre-recorded healings. Like there's one on there called Your Reiki Brain, which is more about me sending very specific psychic Reiki techniques to do brain healing on a person.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a variety of options there. And there are also options there. I often do weekly energy healing, sometimes magical awakening, sometimes psychic Reiki, sometimes angel healing and other things. But those also live on the website, academyofloveandlight.us.
Perfect. Wow. And I'll make sure as well to put the links for the upcoming Reiki classes this summer. One other question I have for you, Brett, if someone is new to your work, because just so everyone knows, you have authored several books about Reiki and energy healing. If someone is new to your work, is there a book that you recommend we might start with, or is it really depend on our personal interest?
I mean, I really invite people to listen to their own gut in terms of what they're pulled toward. I would say if you're really wanting to move into Reiki, but if you're fearful about having to memorize the hand positions and the symbols, then I would say the Psychic Reiki is very accessible. It's very easy, and it also can yet still be quite potent. So for some people, that's just a nice doorway into Reiki. And then if you're more interested in like Merlin and magic, then I would say the Wizard's Guide to Energy Healing might be a better fit.
One last question about this. So the book, The Psychic Reiki and Working with the Reiki Crystal, is that primarily for people who are already attuned to Reiki, or is it anyone?
It can be for anyone. Now, I do think that people who are already attuned to Reiki can certainly get a lot of benefit from it because it kind of explores things that traditional Reiki really doesn't. So it kind of gives a different spin in terms of possibilities. But yes, a person doesn't have to have any Reiki training at all in order to engage it.
Very, very interesting. Well, I have to say, I'm so thankful that we finally got to meet. It was a pleasure to speak with you, but honestly, I hope you'll come back because some of your other books I would love to talk about and some more of your points of view around energy healing. So hopefully you will come back and sit with us again. But thank you so much for taking the time today and for the work you shared with us with the cards.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This has been a complete pleasure, and I've really enjoyed sharing with you. So I would love to do it again if that works out. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, everyone be sure to visit Brett's website. He has another website, which is brettbevell.com, which will be down in the show description. But again, to access all of the classes, go to academyofloveandlight.us, and we will see you all very soon. Okay, beautiful alchemist. First of all, I want to thank Brett again for coming to share with us today. Don't forget, you can learn more about Brett and his work at brettbevell.com. You can also access all of his online courses at academyofloveandlight.us. The links are down in the show description, as well as the link to his Reiki Divine Healing card deck. And if you want to learn more about the Wisdom of Reiki conference, which is taking place June 27th through the 29th at Omega Institute, the link for that is down in the show description as well. And then finally, if you are interested in working with Brett taking one of his Reiki classes this summer, I believe he said part or levels 1 and 2 are in July, and then master level in September. That is also happening at the Omega Institute, but the link is down in the show description so you can get more information about that as well. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to reach out to Brett if you have anything you would like to share about your experience or any insights that came through for you. I, of course, thank you for being here, being part of the community. And I thank all of you who have taken the time to leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening, because it really helps to expand the reach of the podcast. And if you want to learn more about me and my work, be sure to visit theenergeticalchemist.com. I will see you all very soon. And remember to always journey in love.